Joe Frank Carollo, terrific to meet you. Thank
Nice
you
to meet
so
you.
much for your time.
Not a problem. What time is it where you are?
I've got 9 a.m. on Wednesday morning. Thanks for bearing with me and changing that through to
That's not.
2 p.m. your time. Appreciate it a lot. Hey, you're looking good. How's life? What's going on?
Oh, just zipping right along here. Last year, my daughter and her husband, who lived with me, moved to Switzerland. So my son asked me to come out and live with him. So I live out here in the kind of in the country with him.
Oh, that's nice.
It's,
Whereabouts in the country?
it's in Agora Hills, California.
Ah, very nice. But you're originally from Mississippi, aren't you?
Yes, ma'am, from Leland, Mississippi.
Yeah. And have you been in California a long time?
I came out here in 1965, and I traveled a lot back in those days. So I didn't really live anywhere because I was on the road a lot. But I would stay here in California for about 2 or 3 years, and then I'd move back to Mississippi, and then I'd come back out here in a couple of years. And so I've been basically living out here since 1980, although I traveled back and forth earlier and lived out here some.
Right, right. So you say you've been on the road pretty much since 1965. Take us back to those days and tell us what it was like.
Well, it was wacky. Actually, I started playing in the 50s, in 1950, and I had a garage band in the middle 50s. And we did fraternities and stuff like, proms and things like that. And we worked about 5 or 6 states in the South. And I moved my band to Memphis back in the early 60s because Memphis was happening so much at that time. There was so much music out of there. In the little town that I came from, Leland, was a lot of blues stuff that went on in that area. It was called the Delta, Mississippi Delta.
Uh-huh.
And so we took my band to Memphis and played up there. My band there was called Joe Frank and the Knights, like the KNIGHT Knights, and we're actually on a garage band album cover and stuff like that. So,
What
but
sort of
then
music was it?
it was kind of what you were hearing back in the '60s from England. You know, we didn't do any blues. It was kind of what was the current type stuff. Uh, you could check one out. It's called "Can't Find a Way," and the group is Joe Frank and the Knights.
I'll
But it's pretty,
definitely do
yeah,
that.
it's pretty
So,
trippy.
sorry, say that again.
I said it's a pretty trippy little tune, so check it out.
Interesting you say that it was kind of the stuff that was being played in England at the time. That was right at the time of the British invasion, wasn't it?
Yes, ma'am, it was. Yeah. What the stuff that we recorded was that the band that I had that played all the fraternities and stuff like that, we were mostly blues. So we were copied. We didn't do any original material. We basically just a copy band.
So the blues were big then, but by the time you got to Memphis, you started changing the sound up a bit.
Yeah, and I don't know why. We did it because the keyboard player that we had at that time wrote most of the stuff that the band was doing, and he was kind of like on the current side of the music part, and I'm still an old blues guy. I was just as happy to go stand on the corner and listen to somebody play. But we did pretty good. The band was my drummer was my cousin Joe Carrero. It's not Carollo, but Carrero, and he went on to go with Paul Revere and the Raiders. And my guitar player was a guy named Mark Tidwell, and Mark went and played guitar with Charlie Rich, some country players that he went on the road with. So
Ah.
everybody did, and I joined this group called the T-Bones, and that's what ended up being Hamilton, Joe Frank and Reynolds.
So why did Joe Frank and the Knights split up?
Well, we've been together. Been together since like the ninth grade, eighth or ninth grade. I think we were about sick of each other, and we wanted to do something. A couple of the horn players in the band were married, and there were only about 3 or 4 of us that were single. And we wanted to get out of the area, so the only places you would do that would be New York and LA, and I didn't want to go to New York, so we came to California. You know,
Why didn't you
and
want to go to New York?
I didn't really like the way the city was so crowded to me, you know, and growing up in an area where, you know, you would literally step out your back door and you're in the country, you know, so it was, and LA seemed to be happening a lot at that time, you know, and it was just as much music going on here as it was in Memphis. It was just a different style, you know, so.
Uh,
But
would you describe those days as the heyday of music? Was that when it
I,
was? I mean, from all you've seen, was that when the time was the best?
I thought it was, and I still think it was today. But you know, I don't know. My son, who's Joey Newman, and he scores and composer, and when he was in college, the stuff they liked and sampled was R&B stuff out of Memphis. You know, so '60s, all '60s stuff. You know,
Yeah.
so I think that era bumped music into, you know, what's happening today, because it was unbelievable. You heard so much, so many different styles, but everything was just super good.
Do you think it was because it was all new? I mean, it was all blues reinvented at that time. There was so much influence coming in from the Brits. Was it because it was this whole mashup of new stuff at that time?
I believe it was, and there was, you only had at that time was country and pop. You didn't hear much blues on the radio. You know, I heard there was a station that on Saturday had a blues, a couple hours worth of blues. You know, and then when rock and roll came around, that changed up everything. You know, and everybody was experimenting. I don't think anybody really knew, said, "Oh yeah, this is the key. Let's get this and work it." You know, because back in the day, you didn't know what worked. You just tried everything. You know, the worst part about that era, though, was that if you got a hit, within 2 days, there were 25 groups that covered that. And, you know, so it's like, I'm going, why can't you find something, you know, of your own to do? You know, don't pick up somebody else's stuff. You know?
Did that happen to you?
No, you know what? We had, like, once we got a hit, nobody covered it as far as like, but Don't Pull Your Love. Glenn Campbell did a version of it, and a couple of people like that. Sam and Dave, or an R&B version of it. You know, so.
Yeah, I want to get to that song in just a minute, but take me up there. So Joe Frank and the Knights disbanded, and you went and joined the T-Bones. How did that pairing come about?
Well, my band Joe Frank and the Knights was on the road doing a tour, and we were doing it as the Marquees. The Marquees was the house band for Stax Records, and they were the guys you saw in all the Blues Brothers movies.
Really?
They recorded, but they didn't like to tour, so they got a hit, and we went on the road as the Marquees. Which was, you know, there were 60 bands as the Marquees. So everybody, that's the other thing they were doing. They would put 20 bands out there with the same name, you know.
How did
But
they do that?
it was promoters were notorious back in the 50s and 60s for stuff like that, you know. You didn't know who was original or not, truthfully, you know. But the T-Bones, a couple of their players were leaving, and my band on that tour had decided that, you know, we were all going to try to do something else, you know, individually, since we hadn't really done anything as a group. You know, we got a couple of local hits back in the area, but we never got picked up, you know, like on for nationwide stuff like that, you know.
Uh-huh.
So I joined the T-Bones, and I played drums, bass, and keyboard. Not I don't play keyboards well, but I know enough to pick around on it. But that's what I did when I first joined the T-Bones, because the bass player was still with the band, and then when we got to California, he left, and I switched over to bass. The T-Bones did a tour in Japan, and I played drums on that tour, so it was weird, yeah.
Which bit was weird? You playing drums or the
Well,
Japanese
yeah,
audiences?
just me. You know, I don't know why I love playing bass, and I started off playing drums, you know, but I switched over to bass before I got out of high school. You know, uh, but it was that was ended up being the instrument that I really loved to play. You know,
Bass. Right,
Yeah.
right, right. Joe Frank and the Knights were huge, though, weren't they? I mean, you were so popular through the South.
Well, we did. We were known as charging too much and being too loud and playing too long. We, we yeah. If we did a club, they would get pissed off at us because we never took a break. We would do 90 songs in like a couple of hours, but it'd be one right after another, you know. So, but the band was great. I loved the band. The band was kick some severe booty, you know.
And you were behaving like that just because you were so into it, all of you.
Oh, we were crazy. It was, we were into redneck tech. We were out there doing it to death. That was the phrase back in the day. You know,
and
you couldn't come into the band. Now, if we did a fraternity party and you wanted to come sing with the band, it didn't happen. You didn't even put your foot on the stage. You know, we wouldn't let you get near us. That was the thing. And then we played we used to do the University of Alabama about once a month. And during the period when Joe Namath was playing football there, and they came in to sing one night, and the horn section said, "No, it ain't happening. You can't do that," you know. And they just turned around and walked off. And then about maybe 20 years later or 15 years later, I run into Joe Namath at a party one night, and I asked him if he remembered that, and he goes, "Yeah, I kind of sort of remember coming to the party." But
no one's ever refused him before.
and we were, just you get your young kids, and you just get an attitude where like, yeah, let's go do this. But the music was just what I really wanted to do. I enjoyed it. I had so much fun playing. It was ridiculous.
What sort of crowds were you pulling in those days?
Well, when we did a couple of things where we would bring in other bands, and we would do these band battles, and we would rent, like a convention hall or something like that, and throw those parties, and we would draw anywhere from 3 to 5,000 people, and in the South, where these little towns are spread, 30 and 40 miles apart, and
They
it
come
would
from
be,
everywhere.
yeah, and we would do nonstop. That would be the really what would make you want to come see the bands, beside in the bands, was the fact that it was nonstop music. When one band would be on one stage, one be on another. When you finished, the other band picked it up immediately. So you had 4 hours of just serious playing.
Wow, wow, wow. And you guys must have been feeling pretty good about yourselves.
Oh, we loved it. You kidding? We loved
And
it.
egos riding high.
We did TV shows. On one Saturday, every Saturday, like once a month, we would go to Jackson, Mississippi, and do a TV show there. And then we had our own radio show. The Joe Frank. It was insane. It was
So you
nothing
get to,
like the 50s and 60s. I swear music was a really happening thing back then.
yeah. Do you miss those days?
Ma'am. Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, I'm. Thankfully, my son keeps me up on it, and we have a 10-piece blues band together called Joe Frank and the World Famous Assistants.
Dear, that's very
Yeah,
cool to be playing with your son.
yeah. He did this when I turned 60. He said, "Let's play for it's your 60th birthday." So we got together, a couple of his buddies, and we did a hour somewhere in the club. I don't remember where it was. And then when we finished that, so it came up on my 70th birthday, and he said, "Well, you want to do this again?" I said, "Yeah, but we got to put some horns in the band." So we ended up with 4 horns and a 5-piece rhythm section and me. And we do some couple of Hamilton, Joe Frank and Reynolds songs, but it's mostly blues. I'm a big Tower Power fan, so we do a couple of their songs and everything. But it's so much fun to play, and all these guys are composers and arrangers. They play all the time. So sometimes we have rehearsals. Sometimes we don't. We just go play, and Joey writes all the charts out for us, and it works out pretty good. But it's a lot of fun. I hadn't played in a while because of the COVID thing, but we're
You're out there
hoping.
doing it again now. That's
Yeah,
great.
we're hoping to crank it up again. So,
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So just take me back. Let's just walk back. Joe Frank Carollo, you're with
okay.
the T-Bones now,
Yeah.
and and you've gone out and played Japan, which was a weird experience because you were on drums. What
Yeah.
happens next?
Well, we got back to LA, and I think we did one more album with the T-Bones, and then the group split up, and I think I might have gone back to Mississippi for a couple of years and come back, and I think I ran into Tommy and Danny, and they were kind of had different bands and stuff like that. And Danny and I started playing as a duo, and we were working clubs around the LA area, and Tommy had a band of his own. And so his band was splitting up, and Danny and I were working in this club, and so we asked Tommy to come and play, and so he did. He just came and sat in, but he never left. And we were at the club for probably about 6 or 8 months. And during that time, we decided that we would go. Tommy had a connection at ABC Dunhill, so we got a chance to go over and do we did a little thing in the studio for him. And we didn't do anything original. We actually did a Creedence Clearwater medley, which is another weird thing. And while we were singing, they brought out a demo of "Don't Pull Your Love," and they played it for us 3 or 4 times, and then they took us in the studio and we sang it. And before we finished singing it, the president of ABC Dunhill had come in there and wanted to sign us to a record deal that day.
Really?
Yeah.
On the spot?
Right there on. It was really, that was another strange experience, but just all of a sudden we were in there just singing, and they come in, they said, "Hold it," and brought us into the studio and said, "Here, would you guys be interested?" And, of course we went, "Yeah."
How amazing.
So they worked on the first we did worked on "Don't Pull Your Love" to get a single out, and we were working on the album about the same time.
Yeah.
The song, it was released in April, and by July it had sold 1 million copies of it.
Amazing. I want to talk more about "Don't Pull Your Love," but when you were with the boys as the T-Bones, tell me about what happened with this Alka-Seltzer Jingle. There's a funny story there, isn't there?
The songs, the group was actually studio guys, and the producer was a guy named Joe Saraceno, and Joe would pick songs and commercials that he liked, and he would call the guy that wrote them or that did the commercials and ask him to write him a 3.5 minute version of it. And so that's how they ended up doing that. I wasn't with the T-Bones when they did any of the commercial things that they did. Yeah, I joined them after that. Uh-huh. But they did the Alka-Seltzer commercial. They did one for Mustang, and then they did one for some chip commercial thing.
Oh, okay. So you weren't with them at the time anyway.
No.
So back to "Don't Pull Your Love." Was that one originally written for Elvis?
Not that I know of. It had actually been recorded by the same 2 guys that wrote the song about a year before we had got it. And they actually, that's the demo they gave us, was their copy of the single. And we did the same arrangement. The arrangement of it the intro kicked ass. To me, it made the song, But yeah, they had it out a year before, but I never heard that it was done for Elvis.
So when they had it out, it didn't go anywhere?
No, they were back in New Jersey. I think they might have been living back there or working out of there at that time, and nothing ever really happened.
So, Joe, what was so special about your version of "Don't Pull Your Love Out" that saw it become such a huge hit?
I just think it was the vocal power and the sound that we had together. Danny and I had been working together for years, and our harmonies were kind of Everly Brothers type harmonies that we used, and so I really believe it's just the sound that the 2 of us had together.
Right. And did the 3 of you get on really well?
We got along pretty good. It wasn't bad. It was just, the worst part about that kind of thing is that when you work together, you end up kind of being like family, like your brothers. These are like your brothers. So and you argue like family, but we got along pretty good.
Yeah. And once that song started climbing the charts, where did that take you?
Well, we did we came out of clubs and started touring with some major acts, which was good. And we were on the same label that $3 Night and Steppenwolf were on, so we would open for those two acts a lot. We would tour with them, and then we would do things like when "Don't Pull Your Love" went gold, we were opening for the Carpenters at the Hollywood Bowl. So and we were supposed to tour with them, but I think we got a bunch of standing ovations, and Tommy Reynolds, who was a percussionist, just brought the house down. And our horn section was the Tonight Show band horn from the Johnny Carson show.
Oh, really?
And they, even though they had a 35-piece orchestra, but so that we were supposed to go on tour with them, but they didn't take us. I think it was because of that. But we toured with everybody from, literally, like I said, from $3 Night to Johnny Mathis. We toured with him a lot, and did those TV shows.
Johnny Mathis, that's a kind of strange combination.
It was, and I never did understand that, but he liked the stuff that we did. He would come out, he would introduce us one at a time, bring us out on the stage.
He's a lovely man, isn't he?
Oh man, I swear.
Yeah.
And that's like one of the artists that there's very few that we opened for that I would listen to, go back and sit and listen to. But he was, as soon as we got through playing, I was in the audience listening. So
yeah, I just had a chat with Johnny Mathis just a few weeks ago. It was great to catch up with him. Lovely person, very talented. How amazing. So how are you feeling in yourself during these days? I mean, they were even bigger. You were even bigger as a band than what you'd been when you were killing them with the Knights.
Yeah, I don't know. It was it was fun. I really had probably the best times of my life through that. And then I was married 4 times.
Four times.
Yeah, I've got 4 children, and there are 2 of them are from one wife. The other 2 are from different wives. They get along. You would think they were from the same family. They get along just like you wouldn't believe, together and stuff like that. Yeah.
How come so many marriages?
I just, I don't know.
Is that life on the road?
I think that's a lot of it. It was hard. When my first marriage was in Mississippi, and I had 2 daughters, and I was playing, and I was working and playing, and I decided that I wanted to play, and I think my wife was about fed up with all of my redneck crap.
So I'd imagine you were probably playing. And
I could have been, yeah. I ain't gonna talk about that right now, ma'am.
No, probably best not to. So are you still on your 4th marriage?
No. My wife, we were married 35 years. She was 20 years younger than I am. And she passed away about 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah. That's terrible. And tell us what happened to your partners in the band.
Well, Danny passed away in the 90s. He was in his late 40s. Had, I think it was Cushing's disease or something like that.
Yeah, I think he was around 48, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he died. And then Tommy, I used to talk to Tommy about once a year. He became a Jehovah's Witness, and he moved to Florida. And I hadn't talked to him in probably 4 or 5 years now. So I don't know. I guess he's still around.
So no more communication with him at all?
Yeah. He stopped. He actually didn't communicate. We did a 20-year tour. He joined us for that. And he did that with us. And that was literally about the last time we talked.
How does that feel for you to be estranged from him and to have lost Dan?
Well, it doesn't. It's just kind of gone away. When he left the group to do what he wanted to do right after the first album, excuse me. He kind of blew me away. I didn't know what to think with him. And then when he started his own band after he left, and then Hamilton, Joe Frank and Reynolds just kind of stopped for a while. I joined his band, and he had done a bunch of original stuff and sent it to Stax Records, and was ready to sign to Stax. We recorded everything, and all of us were waiting, and he knocked on my door one morning about 7:00 and said, and his hair, he had long hair. His hair was down longer than mine. Hair was all cut off. His eyes to me were like crystal clear, and he said, "I'm not playing anymore. I'm becoming a Jehovah's Witness." And everybody in the band, I swear, he's lucky he's alive, because there were two guys in the band that literally wanted to kill him. They put their whole lives on hold for him, and then he just kind of blew everybody off. So when that happened, I just went, yeah, go ahead. I got nothing to do with you anymore. Right. It was fun when you were here. It ain't no more.
Yeah. Do you know what turned him?
Honestly and truly, I thought that, because I know he was raised a Catholic. I'm raised a Catholic, and God bless us all. If you make it do that, you're doing pretty good. When he got out of high school, he had a chance to either pitch for the Pittsburgh Pirates or join the Naval Academy. Uh-huh. His daddy was a commander or something that retired in the Navy. And he chose to take his steel band to New York and do the music thing, And I noticed that all of his songs had the original stuff had sort of like a trend, like he was searching for something, And I really believe that's what it was. He didn't know really in his life what he wanted to do, so
he found it in the end.
That might have been some salvation for him,
Were you very disappointed?
I didn't care what religion he was. I was disappointed that he didn't want to play and blew this thing off, after we spent. So if he knew what he was going to do way before this, then you should have made some mention to this before we started recording and spent all our time for you.
So did that spell the end for you for playing?
Pardon?
Did that spell the end of well, that was obviously the end of the band. That was the end of your playing?
With him, yeah. It wasn't me play. I loved to play, so I went on and I played with a lot of different people.
Who's been some of your favorites you've played with?
Well, I joined this band called the New Christy Minstrels. They were a big folk singing group back in the 60s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. And I wanted to, I'm not a big folk music fan, I like some of the stuff, but I liked the way they performed, and I wanted to see if maybe I could learn how to do that, help me with my career. And Kenny Rogers was the front guy in the band, and he had left. I joined it after Kenny Rogers left, and I didn't front the band, but I guess because of the Southern accent and stuff like that, I got a lot of solos right off the bat, and I really learned how to perform and how to, though I fronted my band and stuff like that, it was totally different being able to entertain the people as you're telling them about the group also.
Uh-huh. Wow.
So that was probably the biggest one that I worked with,
Yeah. You still learning today?
Yeah.
You still learn as you go today, as you perform? Are there still lessons to be learned in music and performance?
Oh, every day. Every time you pick up your instrument, you bet there's something going on. Yeah.
Would you change anything, the way it turned out for you, or are you happy with it just the way it went?
No, I'm asked that a lot, but if I had to change stuff, like say had I changed back in the 60s when I first got married, all of these kids of mine wouldn't be here. All of my grandkids wouldn't be here, and I'm tickled to death with all of it. So I have no regrets at all.
Oh, that's awesome. Joe Frank Carollo, thank you so much for your time. It's been wonderful chatting with you. What a legend you are, and what a brilliant song that was. Were you never disappointed that you guys never had another massive hit like Don't Pull Your Love?
No, it would have been nice, because we worked really hard on this stuff here. But when when Danny passed away, and I didn't even play for a long time till Joey started this band thing with me. I was kind of I just kind of worn out with it, the whole music thing, and I wasn't big on a lot of the music that was happening at that time. So I just went to work, which I used to do anyway. When I was playing, I always had a job. I told my daddy when I was about 10 years old, I wanted to play music. And he said, well, son, if you do, make sure you got another job.
So what was the other job?
Oh, everything. I drove a school bus at 13. I delivered the mail, in California and in Mississippi. When I worked for a camera rental store.
Oh,
I don't know how I got that job. I'm not a camera person or anything, but the lady that owned it would allow me to, when I was off the road, I'd just come back to work. And when we were gone to play, I'd go off on play on the road for a while.
so you listened to your dad's advice.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
Nobody listens to me. I don't understand that. Hey, Rudy, my dog don't even listen to me.